I'm so glad you tuned in to Hobbies, Crafts, and Collectibles this week. I'm Duska Cornwell, your host. We're going to be talking to two excellent guests this week. Ernie Whitworth from Charleston is going to be here and actually demonstrate how he makes a pewter pendant. We'll also be talking with Gary Worby, who does some beautiful stained glass work. Stay with us. I'm happy to welcome Ernie Whitworth from Charleston to our studio today. Ernie, welcome.
Hi, thanks. They always say on those shows, well, thanks for having me here.
Yes.
It's like, I listen to public radio all the time, so you don't know what,
That's great.
Thank you for having me on.
Oh, Ernie, we're so thrilled. I'm excited because we have a couple of my favorite things. I love craftsmanship, but I also love pewter, and this is really interesting to me. You make pewter pendants and other items, and I want to just get right to it. First of all, why pewter, Ernie?
I used to, in graduate school, cast bronze, weld, and do all those things, but it wasn't portable. You really had to have a studio. You really had to have a workshop. As I'm going to show you, this is incredibly portable.
Okay.
You know, I mean, it's with a couple of tools, and pewter melts at such a low temperature compared to bronze or silver that it's sort of like a poor person's metal, or, you know, it's something anybody can really do. So you can do it in your kitchen. I've been doing it for years, just, you know, with a hot plate like we've got. And, So
what you do is you actually create original designs in a mold made of vulcanized rubber.
Well, first you have to make an original, as I was trying to tell you.
Okay.
And frequently you do that by lost wax casting, which is the oldest process in the world, really. You make something out of wax, put a mold around it, burn it out in the fire, and pour in the metal.
Okay.
Which is, they're still doing it in various areas of Africa. Some beautiful craftsmanship that you would love is done, where they actually go to the honeybee's nest, eat the honey, make the wax little figurines and things out of wax, and then cast them in metal. So that's how all my originals started.
I see. And so then the mold is actually the second step. It's the relief of the sculpture you do out of the wax.
Which made it even easier to sell it, cheaper to make a living, you know, with, I still call them trinkets. So, because then we can make more than one in the tree mold, right? We've got, I'm able to make 3.
Absolutely. So these would actually be broken off of this other piece.
Yeah, which we do with, here, I'll cut one right now.
Okay.
So what we do here is, in the process, we'll cast, but then you've got to cut all this off. Right.
Sure.
Then you file it. And
gotcha.
Run a pendant through it, and at a craft show, I could hang it right around your neck right now, and you'd walk off with.
That's awesome.
So
here's a tree pendant that you've done already. Done that entire process, except stringing it.
Right.
And this is lovely. I love the tree. It's beautiful. So we're going to actually do some stuff. Well, as we're doing it, could you explain to me maybe the process that you go through, and explain a little bit of why. The why is like, why vulcanized rubber, for instance? That may be a great place to start.
Because we can make more than one of a kind. So what you're doing in printmaking, a painting, one of a kind painting, right? One of a kind. Painters frequently made prints because they could make editions of things and then sell them at a cheaper price, although Picasso prints are not going very cheaply. But seriously, so what it allows you to do, and like in this case, when I worked with Girl Scouts on their Metal Merit Badge, or Boy Scouts, they were able to make more than one of a kind, and they could trade. Some of the first things I did with Boy Scouts, they would go to the jamborees and they could trade what they made with other Boy Scouts from Sweden or Denmark or somewhere. Seriously.
Sure.
So it has something to do with lowering the cost. Also, the metal is way cheaper than silver, and it looks silverish.
And because of its low melting point, it's not too hot for the rubber.
Right.
which is wonderful. So there's just a lot of benefits to doing pewter and to using the rubber molds.
Right.
So I want to show, this is one of the first things that you did here. This was for a couple of sweet ladies who had a button shop, right? And they
New York
commissioned
City, right. Tender Buttons. And there's
Tender Buttons in New
any
York.
button folks out there, there's a marvelous book they wrote called Tender Buttons. And,
Isn't that sweet?
It's one of the most beautiful button shops. There is one in Vancouver, British Columbia that's a pretty neat button shop. But the one in New York is definitely, if you're into buttons. You know.
And then a popular company that you did these pins for too. You were also commissioned for a gardening company to do these cool pins. This is a garden spade, which is so fun. And then you also did, you want to hand me that picture over there, I'll hold that up. Now with this would be the, what do you call that with the fork thing on it? Darn
It's
it.
a pitchchfork, but it's also, no, it's a garden spade
They're garden tools.
So
That is really cool. And you had to make like 1,000 of those.
well, I also, we're not talking about companies, but also Governor Edgar, when I did the state of Illinois pin, Edgar's from here, he wanted 1,000. So
wow.
friends of Edgar, you know, politics, we don't talk about money and things. But, so that got me to learn what's important is to make more than one of a kind. And I had to, you know, get some help from a company in Bloomington, Indiana that can mass produce.
Okay, well, let's do some casting, Ernie. I've got this image right here of Old Main. I love this, it's beautiful. And that's here on Eastern's campus. That's our main building. We call it the Castle Building a lot. But how did you get this image, first of all, before you cast it?
Well, first I sat out in front of Old Main and did a drawing. And then I had to, in order to get a metal plate, I had to have it photo engraved. So what you're doing is a high contrast black and white. You're not doing grays or anything like that.
Okay.
So when the engraver, and some of these folks are hard to find, that can take a photograph, reduce it from a drawing
Oh, I would
to
imagine.
that size. So I've done it in various sizes.
I see.
But this one will cast so
Oh,
that you can
good.
get an idea of, so we're taking the vulcanized rubber mold, backing it up with a wooden block, and then we're putting it in the vise, right? And we're going to pour the molten metal, which we have behind us. And
You told me that you started
we
doing
just
this in
made
your
that.
Yeah, you started doing this in your kitchen. All you need is a hot plate
right.
to melt down the pewter.
And then, now we're always very careful when we do this. And, okay, so there we go. So it's really looks like mercury or something.
Wow,
actually.
it does. It looks like liquid mercury. And it
yeah.
doesn't take much, does it, to fill that
Right.
impression? And so how long would that take to cool before
Well,
it's
you're
hardened?
watching. You're going to see it in a minute.
Ooh.
So, but
Right before our
also,
eyes.
incidentally, something my dad taught me. But of all the metals, mercury is the only metal that's molten at room temperature.
Oh, that's why it's always
We have to
always
heat this
see it.
up.
Yeah.
But it's why it's in a thermometer, and when it gets hot, it
That's
goes up.
interesting. Okay.
Incredibly interesting. No,
Yeah.
seriously, and I didn't know
Yeah.
it. I was old when my dad explained that to me. You know.
That is very fascinating. So this is the image that we're going to have, right? We're trying to make an Old Main. We are making.
Right.
I love this. Now, would you have made this into a pendant or a pen or?
No, the little ones are pins.
Okay.
Actually, the big ones I made into bookends, where I just
so they
put them
were-
on walnut blocks. But
Oh,
this one
beautiful.
is sort of too big for, a teeny bit too heavy for you to wear.
I see.
As a, you know. But
I don't know.
okay.
We call that bling. I think we could get away
Bling?
with it. Yeah. a
Oh,
little
well,
bling.
you can have it. So, look.
Oh,
Bling, I like
already.
it.
Look
Okay,
at that.
so now we're carefully taking it apart. Okay, these are the most incredible tools that I've ever had. I think it's, I call it a cow toenail clipper, but it's actually for pulling staples out of fence posts.
Okay.
For farmers.
Let's point that a little bit toward the camera so we can see it a little bit more. There you go. There it is.
We're taking this out with the things.
Okay.
And then we're...
Perfect.
So what we've done is we just duplicated, which is why molds,
yeah.
why I'm interested in the mold process, because I can make more than
Right.
one of a kind, and So.
That is
And
fascinating.
it's pretty realistic. I mean,
It is
it's
very
sort of like that,
realistic.
but
And so it's probably still too hot to actually handle for a
yeah,
little while.
but you got this
But
one.
I got this one. I got this one. You
Yeah,
heard
it
it here.
takes, it stands up, look.
Oh,
But,
that is great.
But yeah, it takes now, it'll be, you know, I don't know, safely, it's better to wait 5 or 10 minutes, but.
Sure. Well, where do you, or how do you acquire your pewter? Is it in a block form like this, a
well,
brick?
these, if you remember cast iron breadstick molds, that's what this is, your grandma's.
Oh,
But what
sure.
I buy a big ingot. I mean, we buy a large ingot
I
and melt
see.
it down, and then I pour it
And then you-
into, right.
They're a little bit more manageable
Right,
and more portable,
so-
aren't they?
right.
I love that. That's a great idea. Little cornbread cast iron skillets. Now this fascinates me, Ernie. Tell a little bit about how you got this ear and what this ear is. I see it's got like a little screw bottom in it.
Yeah, well, that's going to get mounted on a, well, he had put it in this thing. We could put it into, but
Sure.
a walnut base, say.
I see.
But this is
see.
actually an acupuncture ear with, if you look at the tons of.
Yeah, this is an old.
Yeah, I didn't realize our ears are that sensitive. I mean, you know, there's
Right.
tons of spots on your ear for acupuncture.
I
But it's
see.
I tried sculpting ears and I could never, this is absolutely perfect.
Right.
Realistically.
It is, it
So when I
is.
made the mold for the bronze one, you know,
Yeah.
it's,
I like that. And then I also love this turtle pendant that you've got here.
right.
This is beautiful.
So that
you've braided
also
the
is-
string,
yeah,
too.
that also is one of the more complicated castings for some reason. They don't cast really easy, but
I
and the
see.
mold is here. I'll hold that up. So we've got a two-piece
Okay.
turtle mold.
Oh,
of
I
that.
see.
So
So it's more 3D or?
yeah, well, it's and
I
what
see.
when I cast against a board, you're always going to get a flat back, like on this butterfly mold. If I poured that against a board, it's
I see.
flat.
That
But
makes
on
sense.
this one, you've got a little bit of relief on the back.
Right.
So you to
And you'd have to get that exactly perfect.
yeah,
So that must take some doing. That's really neat.
so
There are turtle lovers watching right now who are coveting this necklace. Well, you have
great
done.
tortugas.
You've done some amazing work. You've been, like I said, in National Magazine, and you've made buttons, and you've got some of your work all over the place. And I'm just thrilled to have it here. You're a great artist, Ernie, and so much fun to talk to. And you've done such a great job showing us your craft. I appreciate you coming in.
Oh, thanks so much.
Absolutely. It's my privilege to welcome Gary Worby from Charleston to our set today. Gary, thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'm really excited about this. You know, stained glass has been around for a long time, and me growing up in the church, I've seen a lot of it, and your work rivals any work that I've seen, Gary. It's just beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, very
Appreciate
thrilled to have you. So first, I want to just talk a little bit about, from perspective of being on campus at EIU, you actually have done some work for Eastern's campus,
Right.
haven't you? Explain that. Where
Okay.
is your work displayed?
Well, in the new 7 years ago, the south entrance of the Booth Library, I did the stained glass window over the front entrance to that.
Oh, that is a beautiful
Kind
piece.
of an open book. We kind of took elements from the from around the side of the old part of the library where there was like an open book that was embossed in the cement of the building, and that kind
Right.
of got me started on, because they wanted to have sort of a carryover from of the older traditional part of the library to the newer part. So that was kind of where some of the design ideas came from on that. And then also when I first came back here to Charleston I'm from Illinois originally, Kankakee, Illinois, but I left for about 20 years, lived in San Francisco, lived in Alaska. But when I first came back here to Charleston, they had me do a couple of transom panels for the dormitories at Thomas Hall and Andrews, I believe it is.
Right.
As kids go into the, into the dormitory setting there to eat, I did those windows.
Well, see now, You don't get there overnight, do you? You don't get asked to do stained glass windows for a university overnight. You've been doing this for over 30 years, right?
Yeah. I moved to San Francisco, when I was about 25, and I was working with emotionally disturbed kids as a counselor, and it was tough work, and I was feeling like I wanted to learn how to do something with my hands. I could really see the final results of it, and I would see stained glass all over San Francisco, and I was really attracted to it. And through a friend, I met somebody that was making a living at it, and I got to start taking lessons, and it just kind of took off. And that was 34 years ago, I think. I mean, 35, something like that. I've been doing this now.
Another example of hobby turned into profession.
Yes. I started off just telling friends, I'll make you a window if you just pay for my materials, just so I could get some experience at it.
Sure.
Kind of just mushroom from there.
Right. Oh, well, it's definitely mushroomed. We see some beautiful examples of your work. The process, what you usually do, if I'm right, you're going to sketch a small scale model of what you want the window to look like.
Yeah,
is that right?
If, on a client, like for this, for instance, I'll do a scale drawing of what I intend to do for the client. I think I did this for Carter LaRue Hospital in Indianapolis and a chapel that they had. And then the next step is that you have to draw the pattern to full size. And I brought, a couple of patterns along and some windows along to just kind of show what that process is.
Right. So I love looking at your handiwork here, that you've drawn out the pattern, and then you've also got little places where you've put down what kind of glass is going to go where.
Right.
And so you've actually brought some glass. Now you'd actually then take the glass and lay it over the pattern?
So after I've got my pattern drawn full size, and I use a black magic marker to line it out. The width of that line there kind of accommodates for my lead. So when I cut a piece of glass, I have to cut on either side of that line.
Sure.
It has to be, pretty accurate. Just brought a piece of glass. I can just kind of show you. This one's a little dark here, but I'll go ahead and I'm able to see the line that I'm cutting on through my pattern, and if the glass is too dark and I can't see it through the pattern, well then I will put it on a light table.
I see.
And I kind of tap it on either side, and it comes right out. A little tap.
Someone tells me if I did that, it would not come right out.
And I use, these
You've
are
done
called
this a few times.
breaking pliers, so
Okay,
you
I've
just pull
seen
that out.
those. I see.
And, it comes right out.
And there's your
like that.
piece.
And that's the piece, and I'll, check it for its accuracy and put it on, right on top of there.
Sure.
And as I cut each piece, I check it off so I don't duplicate what I've already done.
All right.
Just to show you the
Yeah, let's see the finished product. This
product
is
of this.
beautiful.
So here it is in stained glass, and I'm just kind of going for a fiery sunset over a field, much like a cornfield in Illinois, just kind of depicting something like that. These lines maybe representing sort of like river or creek patterns or whatever.
That's what I love about this. It's kind of an abstract, but you definitely get that feel of the sunset over the hillside.
Right.
It's beautiful.
Right. I mean, I've done a lot of different styles, real representational things as well, but I find that things that are a little bit more abstract seem like they just kind of last longer in terms of, always seeing something new and different out of it.
Absolutely. This is one of my favorites that you brought for sure. Just love it. Now, to explain as far as the soldering process then would go.
So after I've cut out all my glass and everything, then I actually run a board at a right angle to each other, and I start building my window from one corner and start wrapping lead around it, much like putting a puzzle together, only you're creating the puzzle pieces yourself. And so it's a matter of really starting in one corner and building your window up. And then after I've got all the lead on it, everywhere where the lead intersects each other, that gets soldered. And this is my soldering iron right here.
This
It's
is a big boy.
It's a big one. It's a 200-watt soldering iron, a little heavier duty than maybe a beginner would tend to use because it might tend to melt your lead right away. But
Sure.
what it does for me is it just gives you a real quick solder joint that flows pretty flat. So
This is your solder wire here? What do you
and
call
that's
it?
the solder. Well, this is just called a 50-50 wire solder. It's 50% lead and 50%, I don't know what
I
else.
see. And does that start shiny like this then, and just over time?
Yeah,
does
well,
it age, or?
then the final step after the window's all been soldered and everything is there's a professional cement mix that is applied to the window that I brush into the window. It's kind of muddy, and you just brush it into the window on both sides, and then clean it all off real well, and it gets in between the lead and the glass and just really cements everything
really good
together.
seal.
So the window isn't rattly or loose because some glass is thicker than others,
Sure.
And that process starts to darken the lead,
I see.
from being shiny. And then there's a chemical patina that I put on the actual solder joints that blend the color with the lead and just make it all look like it's all one thing.
That is one of the most seamless jobs I've seen, actually. It's just really, really
Yeah, you want
lovely.
to have it looking pretty seamless. A lot of times, you might see some work done where the solder joints are kind of globby, kind of
Right.
large looking. So that's just one of those techniques that you get better at over time.
Right. Practice makes perfect, as Mama always said. Yeah. And now this is a pattern for one you're going to be showing us. This would be the pattern for the next window that we're going to.
So this is just a typical floral pattern that is always popular in stained glass to do something like that.
Sure.
This is another, just a drawing of a job I did for a lady out in Arthur, Illinois.
At her residence, right?
At her residence. These were windows up high in their living room, and the design is kind of a fuchsia pattern.
Yeah, the florals are a popular pattern for stained glass. Let's show the finished product of that. This one I love because you have actually used what you call, explain what antique glass means in the stained glass world.
A lot of the glass I like to use is pretty translucent. There's opalescent glass, which is kind of what's in the flowers here and in the leaves, more of a solid color that you can't really see through. But then these glasses here, this is a French antique glass from a company called Saint Just, and it's called Crackle. And antique glass doesn't mean that it's old, it means that it's mouth-blown glass is what it is. And so this is a mouth-blown glass that they've created. This over here is a clear glass. I don't know if the camera picks it up well enough, but it has little striation lines in it. And this is what is called a G&A glass. It's German new antique glass that they've made. And then there are bevels that I've kind of used in here, and through my supplier I can get all shapes and sizes of the bevels, and I'll tend to work them into various designs. I have another one here that
Let's show that.
We'll show.
The last one is kind of a harkens to the Frank Lloyd Wright kind of mission style.
Yeah. Now. So this is kind of a smaller cutaway version of some doors I did for a church up in the Chicago area. You can kind of see I've got kind of a cross going through here that's being created with the help of color and with bevels. I've got bevels in through here, and I've got bevels out here too that I put in here. And some of that crackle I've talked about. And this glass up here is another antique mouth-blown glass. It just has a beautiful quality to it. When people ask about the price of things that I do, it really depends on what the amount of detail in the window, but also the type of glass being used. You know, there are some very inexpensive kinds of glasses you can work with, and there are very expensive glasses you can work with. So that all kind of, you know, is taken into account when I quote a client, you know,
Sure.
what the price would be, and it's usually done on kind of a square foot basis. You know how okay, 3 foot by 4 foot kind of thing. You know, and I'll quote
Understood.
it.
Well, it's beautiful, and I wish we had time to show more. People can find you, do a search for your website, Gary, and see some more of your beautiful work.
Right.
It is just
So several samples of on my website that show both my church work and commercial and residential work too.
wonderful. Well, I appreciate you bringing your lovely work in and showing us a little bit of the process of stained glass. We really appreciate it. It's beautiful.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Gary. I hope you enjoyed today's show of Hobbies, Crafts, and Collectibles. If you know someone who has a hobby, craft, or collectible and we should talk to them, we would love to hear from you. Hope you'll join us next week.